it could be substantial. We could be up for what I have been calling a G day. Hello and welcome to another episode of Time SEO. Today we're talking about what will actually happen if Google pulls out of Australia. Now, it's been all over the news, all over the SERPs, everywhere you can possibly see. It is the clash of titans as Google goes up against Murdoch Media. Now, if Google pulls its search engine in Australia, it could mean that you would probably hit a landing page instead of Google search when you go to that Google homepage. Also, Google have not actually really talked about if they're pulling search, suite, or everything. If Google makes a complete withdrawal, that could mean all Gmail is down, all G Suite is down, all Google Analytics is down, all the local is down, all of Maps is down. It could be substantial. We could be up for what I have been calling a G day, which is awful, but I just made that up then, so we're going to roll with that. But essentially your browser and your desktop and mobile phone would need to be switched to another search engine to continue working. Now, obviously you could get around that with a VPN, but a lot of people, I would suggest, would just be using Bing or DuckDuckGo. So why can't Google and Facebook just remove Australian news sites that are part of the code is a question that I'm getting every day. Now, the simple solution for the digital platforms would be to just ban sites from Australian news altogether. And they've tested that previously, and it really didn't have that much of an impact on user experience. But the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission, in their wisdom, realised that they may try that and has drafted legislation so that if they try and Australian members of the code are treated differently from news outlets, then the platforms could get a fine. Now, Google recently admitted to running experiments again previously on this and concluded that it wasn't that substantial, and it blocked some content of some news sites but not others. But again, under the ACCC safeguards, Google and Facebook would not be able to do that without exposing themselves to fines. So you're probably thinking, what about all my SEO gains? Are they going to waste? Well, no. So the other search engines copy really what Google does, and they all try and mimic Google. They are basically the guiding light of where everyone wants to be. So your SEO gains mostly will remain the same on Bing or DuckDuckGo, but you're going to have to switch some things around. You're going to have to verifying your domain in both of those search engines, and all of a sudden, it's going to be a lot of SEO for Bing and a lot of SEO for DuckDuckGo, and tools like SEMrush don't have a lot of measurement for Bing or DuckDuckGo because they're only 3% of the market. Like, no one really is that worried about them. Luckily though, Microsoft CEO has assured us that Bing's going to be up to the challenge. So I'm looking forward to see what that looks like, given that Bing still regularly gets manipulated by PBNs and outdated SEO tactics from 5 years ago. I think what's going to happen is if Google does make a move and they remove themselves, it'll only be for like a week or so. But even in that week, I think it'll be terrible for a lot of small businesses. It's not going to be the large businesses that are impacted by this. Our large clients are going to be A-OK. But it's going to be small businesses that have just gotten through COVID that are going to have different placements in Bing, different placements in DuckDuckGo, and they're the ones that are going to see a substantial hit from business coming from Google Maps, because a lot of local business comes from Google Maps and their reviews. So I would challenge the government to think about this. Absolutely we can't bend over for Google and Facebook, but we've got to realize that what they're asking for is their infrastructure of how the search engine works. If you give that to people at news organizations, they're all going to literally take apart Google and manipulate it piece by piece to make sure their news decimates everyone else. Every other news company, every other website, they're going to want all of Google. And we can't let guys like Murdoch Media do that. It completely obliterates people's freedom of speech in a capacity that people just have no idea. Not only that, but it also has a massive impact on those small businesses that are trying to get through COVID and are just coming out on the other end to get hit by another tidal wave. So if you ask what side I'm on, I'm not on Google's, I'm not on Murdoch's. I think everyone needs to come together with a fair system. I think the government is long overdue for coming and talking to organizations like the Australian Web Industry Association and these different digital players that know a bit more of what's going on to the day-to-day of businesses and of the digital community than the government that really don't dip their toes in it at all. So please, if you are listening from one of those departments, get in touch, talk through these issues. We don't need to have a bit of a pissing competition with who's bigger, who's better. We need to come together and agree on what's best for Australia. So what do you think? Will the companies go through with this threat or not? I personally don't think they will. I think they'll come to an agreement. My hope very much is that they come to an agreement, because otherwise it really just says a lot to society that we're willing to just, do these kind of things that decimates businesses because of our ego. So we'll see. I've spoken to a lot of contacts in the industry and at Google, and they have been saying it's below 1% probability. But I've never been a gambling man, so we'll have to see. Anyway, until next tea time, we'll chat then.